quick demonstration of load balancing in a rack, in a clustered environment in Oracle database, which is called a rack environment. So normally in recent versions you use the scan to connect, but you can also use VIPs to connect, and that's how we used to connect before scan became available. Rack became available in Oracle 9i, but scan was implemented at the 11gr2, maybe 11gr1, but not before that. So before that we used to use even VIPs to do load balancing and failover. The way this is defined is, if at connect time I can't connect to the first IP, I will fail over to the second IP. That's connect time failover. Okay. There's another thing called transparent application failover. Is when I'm running a query, if the instance goes down, the query will fail over to the surviving instance. That's transparent application failover. There's a third time, that is transparent application continuity. If I'm running a transaction, even a transaction can fail over. But to do transparent application continuity, you have to build in some additional code in your application to do the retry. So first I'll just show you what the scan means. Sorry. Okay, so there are three different IP addresses for the scan. My DNS is returning three different IP addresses. You can see here 94, 95. At some time it will return 96, but that doesn't matter to us. If I were to query here, so here we can see that each node has its own listener, and there are three scan listeners. So when you connect via scan, whether your connection goes to scan 2, scan 1 or scan 3, it will identify which node to go to. For example, if you connect to scan 1 and server side load balancing says, okay, although server 2 is where you've connected, server 1 is less loaded, I will redirect you to the server 1 listener. And let's say you might have got connected to the IP address map to server 1, that is scan 2, and the scan listener says, okay, server 2 is less loaded, I will redirect you to the server 2 local listener. So that's how scan does scan with load balancing that you have configured for your service will work. I have a couple of blog posts on how a service definition is created. This is my service name. Sorry, this is my service name, and I'll post links to those blog posts on the service definition and how you can have load balancing rules along with that. But for the present, I'll just show you my query here. So my query identifies the timestamp, the instance name and the host name to show you where the connection request went to. So the first one is using scan, using a label called myPDB, that is myDB, that is the default behavior you would say. myPDB connects to a service called myPDB via scan. So it's connected to server 1, then the scan says, okay, I will connect you to server 2 also at times. So that's the load balancing from the server side, server 1 or server 2. Now this one says I will use my CLB scan, that is client side load balancing. CLB means client side load balancing. I will try any one of those three IP addresses based on load balance rule, and if that IP address is down, I will fail over. But in this case, because the scan failover is not very material, but this is how these two work. I will try 94. If 94 is down, I'll try 95. But 95 is a scan, so 95 might still redirect me to another local listener. So I'll just show you this connection. So here also you can see it's alternating between the two servers. And this is in the VIP. Now here I've shown with the VIP because that's the method we used to use earlier. You might even want to try with the actual host IP if your listener is listening on the host IP as well and not just the VIP. So in this case, what I've defined is I will try to connect to this VIP. If it is not available, I will fail over to the other VIP. But I will not always try to connect to this VIP because I also have load balancing. So that's how the client side load balancing works. So it connected to server 2, okay, then it connected to server 1. So it's connecting to different. Now in this case, remember, this is not scan. It's not connecting to scan. These are the three scan IPs. I'm not connecting to the scan, I'm connecting to the VIP. So I'm connecting to the two different VIPs alternately. Now let's see what happens if I shut down the database on server 2. I'm just shutting down the database instance, I'm not shutting down the cluster. So if I shut down the database instance, the database resource will be down, but the scan listeners will remain up and the local listeners will remain up, because these are all run from the clusterware, not from the RDBMS home. Okay, so my RAC DB2 is going down. Okay, so let me just check the cluster resources. Remember, you can check cluster resources from any node in the cluster as long as the node is running. So here it says database resource on node 2 is down, is running only on node 1, but I still have all three scan listeners running and I still have both local listeners running. So now let's see what happens if I try to connect using these three methods. Earlier you saw that all three of the methods will alternate between server 1 and server 2, right? You can see all three methods would alternate between server 2 and server 1. But now if I use just the scan, here you can see scan 1 is running on node 2, but scan 2 and 3 are running on node 1. So if my request goes to scan 2 will detect, okay, although I am running on node 1, I might still redirect it to server 2 if the server 2 database is up. If server 2 database is down, I will always redirect to server 1 database. If your connection request goes to scan 1, it says, okay, you've come to me, I am running as a scan listener, but my local database is down, so I will redirect you to server 1 always. So that's what's happening here. Let's try the scan based load balancing. It will behave the same way. So again, in this case, I'm just trying to connect via the scan IPs explicitly rather than the scan name. So there's not much of a difference between these two, but I just have used this method that we used to use earlier with load balance and failover definitions. And then what if I'm using the VIP? So my CLB VIPs is this one. I'm connecting to either of the two VIPs based on my load balance rule. If I try to connect to one VIP and it is down, I will try to connect to other VIP because of the failover rule. So again, here all connections will go to server 1, obviously, because whether I go either the VIP or the scan, I'm only connecting to server 1. So even if my request tries to go to the VIP for server 2, it says nope, not yet, not running. I will go back to server 1. Okay, so let's bring up the server 1. Shut down server 2, bring up server 1 database first. Sorry. Okay, you can always use SRVCTL to shut down and start up the instances, but just for simplicity I'm using SQL Plus, so you can see what command I'm explicitly running. I could have used SRVCTL. I just wait for this one to be up, so that this instance will register with the listeners and this instance will deregister with the listeners. Okay, I'll show you, for example, here. So how it does that register is my remote listener is defined. So when I come up, I'll register with the scan listener, but I will also register with the local listener. Okay, so that's two registrations done. So let's go back. Once this is down, we'll just check this cluster resources. Okay, so right now it's going offline. Server 1 instance is going offline, server 2 is still up. Server 2 is up. Okay, so this is definitely now it's completely offline, shut down, and but your scan listeners are still as they were earlier. Sorry, scan listeners are still as they were earlier. They have not changed the location because I have not touched the cluster resources. I have not relocated scan. I have not shut down a node. I have only shut down a database instance. Similarly, the local listeners are still running on both. But obviously, if node database instance 1 is down, it has unregistered itself from the listeners. So whichever method I use, whether I use the scan this method using this mypdb, which is this label which connects to this service via this host. So it will always connect to server 2. If I specify my client side load balancing via the scan, it still behaves the same way, always connecting to server 2. And if I specify correct load balancing via the VIPs, this one myCLB VIP, that's here, right? So it can still load balance and failover. In this demonstration, I'm not showing you failover, but I'm actually showing you the okay. I'm showing you failover in the sense that this IP address is down, so it will always fail over to this IP address. I'm sorry, I mean the IP address is not down, but the load balancing will work because the database instance is not responding on that IP address anymore. Okay, so let's just restart this database. And then we will try this three methods again. Show you here as well. Let me here I had shown you the remote listener and local listener. Sorry, show parameter. So you have to be very careful defining your local listener properly. So your local listener is on node 1 is the VIP here, and remote is still the scan. So if I try connecting this scan, now it's connecting to server 1 as well. Maybe at some time it will say, okay, I will also try to connect to server 2. But it has just detected server 1 is up, so it thinks server 1 is least loaded right now. I can send requests to server 1. Okay, we'll come back to this later. Yeah, okay, now it has detected, okay, I can do server 2 as well. Let's try the other methods. Load balancing via the RAC via the scan. Okay, CLB scan, CLB scan, 3 scan IP addresses. And you can see it's going to either the two nodes, via the VIP, either of the two nodes using failover and load balancing. Sorry. So these methods are available. They've been available since before scan came up. Scan came up in 11GR2, maybe 11GR1, but RAC came up in 9i. Before that was OPS, and these were the methods we used to. And Oracle still supports these methods because in the documentation, if you look at the 9i documentation, non-scan methods of connecting via VIPs is still supported for applications that cannot handle 3 different IP addresses being returned at different times. But that doesn't mean even a normal application that uses Oracle JDBC drivers or Oracle clients is not allowed to use VIPs. You're allowed to do that. Let's say you have a 3-node cluster and you have 6 applications connected to the same database. You can have 2 applications connecting to one VIP, another 2 connecting to another VIP, another 2 connecting to another VIP. Okay, and they just did load balancing that way. That is client-side load balancing rather than server-side load balancing. I will post my links to a couple of posts where I had shown how service is defined, and in the service definition you can also specify server-side load balancing. But if you don't do server-side load balancing, you do client-side load balancing. This failover is client-side connect time failover. There is another failover called transparent application failover. When a query is running and the node goes down, the query can fail over to the surviving node, but a transaction will not fail over. And there is something called transparent application continuity where you can even configure transaction failover. That requires a bit of coding, there are a number of dependencies for the retry of your transaction, but standard connect time failover and transparent application failover have been available since, I think they've been available since OPS also. Thank you.